Hello everyone and welcome back to another Getting Stuff Painted, my bi-weekly update, give or take, on the various miniatures I've been painting for the games that we cover here on the channel. Hasn't been that long since the last one. I've kind of been focusing on painting for a little bit. Been a little bit under the weather, so if you hear any spluttering or congestion or just general unpleasant noises, I apologise in advance. Just on the tail end of it now though. But it did give me time to get a lot of stuff painted, to the detriment of recording other things, but hopefully that'll change going into next week. So, we have a lot to talk about. We have a big chunk, 2 landsfulls of mechs for Battletech. We have some Warhammer Age of Sigmar / specifically for my purposes Warcry, 1 model from Core Clash, some Batman miniature game, and boy do I have some things to complain about there. And tailing off at the end there on the far right, hopefully in frame, yes, barely, we have some Dead by Daylight, the board game. As always, mostly painted with contrast paint. There's actually some exceptions this time, but we'll get to that as we yammer through this lot. So we'll start with something simple, one lance that was in the most recent Battletech video to date, and oops, the longbow's long arms get in the way something fierce. And they're just painted up in my Mercenary band's colours, which I've talked about many times before. The 2 main colours are Athematic Blue and Talisar Blue. That's about it. Some texture paint and dust effect paint on their feet as well. Talked about it many times before, but specifically we have a guillotine, we have the Mad Cat, we have the longbow, and we have the Axeman. Pretty fun setup, and these were from blind boxes, if I remember correctly. See, there we go. Anyway, so I don't need to talk about the colours, but if you just wanted a little bit of a close-up look of how they turned out, again, using the non-oil wash that is not super reflective, either, again, it has the gloss in it by mistake, or it just is a bad mix of the normal non-oil, well, the new normal, I guess, which is the name of Mary Jane Watson's podcast, in case you're curious, which is a slight spoiler, so I won't go into any more details. But either way, there is, I wanted to paint one of these up, so I'm glad I got it in a blind box after seeing it painted up in like the clan colours and the Wolf's Dragoons as well. It's like, I definitely want one for my own, to have in my own Mercenaries. They are very cool. They're the mech everybody knows, even if you're not super familiar with the Battletech universe. You see that mech type, that chassis, and you know what it is. Longbow, it looks stupid, it's funny looking. It's actually not that effective in MechWarrior 5 either. They added it in DLC, and it was basically just disappointing compared to the catapult. It's just, or maybe even a trebuchet. Well, no, it's better than a trebuchet, but it still paled in comparison to things that were lighter and easier to get, so not exactly a great thing. I think they rebalanced it though. And the Axeman, he has a little axe, he likes to swing it. Also added in DLC to MechWarrior 5, the video game. Haven't really played it, or used that mech, that is, not my style. Fun though, and I'm pretty sure that an Axeman was one of the main mechs in the 90s cartoon, which is probably why I remember it. Yeah, I think so. Either way. Mercenary band colours, done. So next we have the other lance. This is sold as Snords Irregulars. If you buy the box they come in, this is what you get. You get a Highlander, a Spartan, Frankenmech, aka the Sneed 2, I think, and also a guillotine. So for these, I didn't want to use contrast paint, I wanted to use a fancy method, so I decided to use the method of Zenithal highlighting that I did for the Warcry terrain. And in doing that, I did make some mistakes. The main one being, I'm used to, well, I haven't done much Zenithal highlighting. I use the same colours though. It's a turquoise on top of a, what's it called, a royal red? Crimson? Not crimson red. Regal red? That sounds about right. Exactly the same as I did on some Warcry scenery previously. But I didn't account for the mechs obviously being smaller than the scenery I was working on, so when I applied the first coat, which was like that red, I applied it on a bit too thickly, to the point where I feel like some definition has actually been lost in the mechs, unfortunately, that you couldn't really get back unless I stripped down and started from scratch. Another slight negative that unfortunately I didn't think about at the point of doing it is battle reports I'm mostly seen from that kind of angle, maybe like 3/4, so kind of like that angle, so the Zenithal isn't as nice if you're not seeing the front on, and also it makes them look a little bit too similar. Not one-to-one, but a little bit too similar to my Mercenary band's unique colours. So a couple of missteps there for sure, but Snords Irregulars like their weirdness. They like tech and they like standing out, and they don't know what the word camouflage means, I guess. So it doesn't really matter in that regard. So those are the two colours. It's spray paints, didn't use contrast paints. Lead Belcher Silver, non-oil, and the yellow there, I think that was Iron Jaw yellow on top of silver paint, which is why it looks a little odd. But as I say, I messed up a little bit with spraying the first coat way too thick, so like a good maybe 20% of the definition has definitely been lost, and that's the stuff that the washes work with. So messed up a little bit, still nice looking and different looking to the stuff I usually paint in contrast. I will say I prefer the contrast stuff, but that's probably because I've been using it for years at this point. But if you wanted a quick method to paint up mechs to nice standard, just pick two contrasting, or I was going to say, well, would they have to be contrasting colours? I guess they would to make the effect better, because I've tried doing grey on black and it does work to a certain extent. It's not as nice, it doesn't have as striking an effect, so you really do kind of need colours that at least clash in some way, or different warmths at least. If you know about colour temperature, maybe that's the way you go about it. But either way, Highlander, I like the Highlander. I think I have a Highlander actually. I think I got that in a blind box. Maybe. I've got some of the mechs sitting here from blind boxes still. They've been sitting here for literally months. It's all the clan mechs though, because they're the ones I'm not as interested in besides the Mad Cat. Well, Highlander I like. I wish it performed a little bit better in the video games that have Highlanders in them. On the tabletop it seemed fine. It's no Atlas, but it's pretty fun. I just like that he's basically just a slab of metal. It's a pretty neat thing. And my dog is crying at me. But I tell her to bring me the toys, and she drops them about 2 meters away from me and acts like that's what I meant. She refuses to learn to play fetch, and I can't give in. I can't. So you might hear her crying some more as we go on. Oh, one failure at getting her to play fetch. Later we have 2 Age of Sigmar models, although I think he is actually meant for Warcry specifically. We have a Branch Witch for Sylvaneth, who's hopefully going to come into focus. She's oddly shaped, so oh yeah, there we go. So I use the same colours as I used for Nary's Guardians for Warhammer Underworld. So it's Briar Queen Chill with Quelia green wash on top, Rattling Grime for the wood effect, with some Mantis Warrior green and also Striking Scorpion green, and this is just Philippus pink with a little bit of Magus purple. And I think that about covers it. For the bases, I'm using the AK Technical Paint. You're going to hear that again as we get to the end of the video today, with Mantis Warrior green on top, and then just a flower effect, you know, the brush that you just glue onto the base. I got this from a little magazine that you can pick up that Games Workshop do, where they kind of just give away like Age of Sigmar models. Sometimes it's a single thing, like in this case, sometimes it's like 3 Gryph-hounds, that kind of thing. So I found some reduced on a website, and I picked up a few for armies that I like. So Branch Witch, I have no idea how she'll act. I've still got to paint up a bunch more Sylvaneth till they're actually usable in Warcry, but looking forward to it. And for this is the Ogoroid Myrmidon, I think it's called. It's just a Minotaur to me, but I think it's called Ogoroid Myrmidon, if I'm saying that wrong, because there's also an Ogoroid Crusher, and that's the big Cyclops thing. But this is an older sculpt for Warcry. Picked it up, found it cheap, and tried to match up the official paint job as best I could. His skin tone is actually Skeletal Horde with Aggressor shade on top. Some Black Templar with silver dry brushed on top for his silver looking horns. Again, I was just trying to match the paint job of the official one. And for his shield, that is the bronze paint I talked about last time, Bronze Hide or something it's called, with Aethermatic Blue on top to give it a kind of rusted, bronzy, coppery, whatever you call it, look. A very neat model. It's just a mercenary or a ally, I think is the correct term for Warcry. It's an ally for any chaos, basically, group. But I haven't tried him yet. Hopefully we'll get him in the next battle report, see how he is. Very muscly, very, very dangerous in close combat, and he doesn't like people getting away from him, so he has a few options for stopping that. The base is again the AK Technical Paint, this time with Basilicanum Grey on top and generous helpings of Blood for the Blood God. He towers over himself, he's leaning forwards, so it's very hard for me to show you the base because he casts his own shadow over his base, so it's a little hard to show off. Maybe from a bit further away it might be, probably not, no. It's It's one of those weirdly shaped miniatures that's kind of hard to show off proper, but hopefully I gave you a little bit of a good look at how he is. Oh yeah, I did a little bit of a red wash over his face to look like he's literally red in the face with anger, because I did the same on the wounds to make the scar tissue look fresher. I don't really know if that's coming out as good as I thought it did, but it's not too bad. Quick mention to one miniature painted up for Core Clash, which was to date the most recent viewer verdict video, although I did do some coverage of it back when I originally got the Kickstarter. This is Core Destroyer, who is obviously based around Megatron, legally distinct though, of course, and I used a stand-in for this actual character last time because he was on my painting table. I think he was just base coat at that point. Basilicanum Grey, dry brushing of Necron Compound, non-oil, and the purple and red bits I have specifically done to make him look like his War for Cybertron video game variant, which is actually one of my favourite looking Megatrons. They messed it up in the sequel because he gets brought back to life in the sequel, spoilers, after Metroplex crushes him, and Soundwave kind of gives him this like weird spiky overly purple glowy version of his armour. It doesn't look as cool as this style did. It is not a glow up. Whatever the opposite of a glow up is, that's what he gets. And as he says himself in the video game, you can't improve upon perfection. Soundwave tried and Soundwave failed. But either way, this is Core Destroyer, this isn't Megatron, but I'm getting sidetracked. Fun miniature, very imposing, very massive compared to most of the other miniatures, so I guess and he's not even necessarily a villain, because any robot can team up with any robot in Core Clash, but certain ones are just, they look evil and they're taller in general than your standard bot size. But we might see more Core Clash. It didn't do that well in the viewer verdict. It got a couple of 4 votes, but in general the video itself was not watched as much as the previous ones, which is to be expected for a a miniature game rather, that had a very small run and hasn't had a second edition or anything like that. Still available from their website, but it was never super popular, which is a great shame because in terms of the quality of their minis, they're great. So if you follow me on Twitter, or actually I didn't complain about it on Blue Sky. I'm trying to use Blue Sky more because Twitter is a cesspit. But I did complain about this on Twitter because I knew that someone who at the time worked for Night Models followed me. Although when they liked the tweet of me complaining about it, I was like, hang on a second. Are you supposed to be liking that kind of thing? And he actually got in touch and explained that he unfortunately was fired by Night Models on New Year's Eve, but has since gone on to a much better job for a company that is of higher standards, let's say, without going into too many specifics. Anyway, the thing I was complaining about is these three. We have Huntress, we have Clown Hunter, we have Spoiler. They were all in the same release. The unboxing was on the channel. It was called Unveiling the Truth, I think, or Unveiling something, because there's an objective card called Unveiling the Truth. I might be confusing it. Either way, they were in the box together. They are completely out of scale with one another. This is a fully grown 30-something woman. This is a short 17-year-old Asian kid. And this is, well, she's just like a normal lady. I think she's on the younger side because I think she dated Tim for a while. So she's probably in her early 20s, I guess. I don't know offhand. Either way, they are utterly out of scale with one another, to the point where I'm pretty sure they confused the scale of these two. I'm pretty sure she is meant to be that scale and he is meant to be that scale, because then it would fit well enough if you ignore that Spoiler's cape is way too long. So they messed up with this release, and it wasn't really apparent when you were just looking at the box, because if you go back to that unboxing and look at the box, they've got them positioned in such a way, it's kind of like this. So you can't tell that Spoiler is too large compared to both of them, and you can't really tell that Huntress is too small because Clown Hunter here is front of camera, so your mind just fills in the blank that, oh, he's closer to the camera, so of course he looks larger. But if you go and look at it real close, you can tell. And it's annoying. It is annoying. Originally, I don't think Clown Hunter was meant to be in this release. Like, I'll try and get these both in focus together. I'm pretty sure it was originally meant to be Orphan, but maybe WB forced them to put Clown Hunter in just to give them the benefit of the doubt. It would make much more sense if Orphan was in here instead of him, but whatever. But this is them perfectly in line with each other. I mean, you can just tell just by looking at like head size, arm length, leg length. They are not the same scale. They are disproportionate to one another, and it is annoying. The other annoying thing about this release, and I'm sorry I'm focusing on this rather than talking about the colours, but hey, I use like 10 contrast paints for everything. So the other annoying part is they were infuriating to put together, to the point where I actually did mess up Clown Hunter or something fierce. And this is why sometimes it's a good thing to have assembly instructions, even if digital, like Crisis Protocol does. Because he has a little socket down here, which is like, okay, so that's where his arm goes then, right? It makes the most sense. But because he's twisting himself around so much, like it is a very dynamic pose, the join point for his arm is actually like right up against his neck, and I couldn't tell that at a glance. So I ended up sticking it down here where it totally was not meant to be, so the arms wouldn't line up. Had to break it off. He's meant to have a metal shoulder pad here, but it just is broken and gone because it crystallized and cracked off. So I did the same over here to make the arms match, so it's just like he's just wearing a vest. But it was awful to put together because there was no guide. And it is rare for a Night Models miniature to actually need an assembly guide, I will say that. Some of the more complicated DC Universe, like the big base fancy Superman and Wonder Woman, they needed instructions, and they got instructions. Little things like this, you would think just a little printout would just make it clear. Especially because with Night Models miniatures, very frequently you'll get holes where you're meant to slot something in, but you've been given a miscast, so the hole is filled in or not the right shape or isn't smooth. And it's very, very frustrating. It's been a while since I've assembled some Night Model stuff outside of some of the DC miniatures I actually have I've assembled. I assembled the Atrocitus and the Sinestro. They're older sculpts and they're fine. Had a little bit of problems with them, but I'll talk about that when they're painted. Nowhere near as bad as these. And these are newer sculpts. These are brand new. They've been teasing these since late last year, I think it was. But still, they've been worked on, relatively speaking, recently. Anyway, I used colours. I've talked about the things I want to talk about. Luxian Purple, Black Templar, that's basically like Gilliman Flesh. I used both black contrast paints actually for this, so Black Templar and Black Legion. The bases are all Basilicanum Grey, Agrat Earthshade over the top, and Storm Vermin Fur to make it look a little bit smoother and less streaky after that. Kind of nice effect, honestly. Again, casting our own shadow, unfortunately. Basically just the same black and white for Bow here. Bo? I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I'll just call him Clown Hunter. Although that isn't his name, that's his vigilante name. But other than that, it's just Glorifound Orange. Oh, actually, it's a Flame Serpent Orange or whatever the other orange is called. Oh, my dog is growling at someone. Yeah, I know. It's an old lady going past the window. You're showing how tough you are right there. I think the old lady could take her, to be honest. She disagrees, but I know better. So, not much to say about him. Very basic colour palette, but nice pose. It's a shame that I was so frustrated by the assembly process. Same with Spoiler, haven't really shown off, but her cape is way too large. I get that it's meant to be like it's stylized, but way too large, and her arms are a bit out of length with each other, as are her legs. And they slot in, but they don't slot in well to the scenery she's kind of mantling, so I had to create a couple of extra anchor points to make it even at all possible. So, frustrating with this one as well, to be honest. This is a mixture of Magus Purple and Volupus Pink with a wash over the top. It's not the ideal colour for Spoiler, it's not quite the right shade, but I made the most of what I had. And it's just some Nazdrag yellow for the Wayne Enterprises sign there as well. It's a shame because it is a very dynamic pose, but it's just with how the Night Models resin is, the cleanup you've got to do, and you've got to hope that you get a good sculpt that has the holes where they should be for slotting in arms and legs and thighs to make sure they match up to roughly how you think they're based. Like, you've got to get it all perfect, and they don't send you perfect. They never send you perfect, basically. I would love to see the reaction from someone who isn't familiar at all with cleaning up resin for assembly, to just get the average box of resin from Night Models and just look at it and see how untidy it is and just have no clue what to do. Anyway, enough about that unpleasantness. You probably won't be seeing them on a table anytime soon, because there's still no word as when the new objective card pack is released, so you can actually play the game legally, unless you're willing to print out over 600 cards. They've also done the frustrating thing now of giving individual models different stat cards based on which crew they're in. So for some models you need to print off 2 stat cards now. So that's definitely the way to run a business. Anywho, spoilers for what the next viewer verdict is going to be, but getting along with painting some of the Dead by Daylight board game. Killer done, 2 out of the 4. Survivor's done, just got to paint up Ace and... well, I think it's not Meg. Meg's the one in the pink shirt, right? It's the other one, the one that looks like a drug addict. Don't remember her name. But either way, those are the other 2 I'm painting up. Actually had fun. Good resin to work with. Had no problems at all with painting these up. So I picked the Doctor because that was one of the killers I enjoyed playing as in the video game when I did play it a while, many years ago now. Also, because he's wearing a lab coat, there wasn't much to paint in that regard. I used Guilliman Flesh. I also used a red wash because he kind of has scar tissue, because he's all about electricity, so he's not doing so well himself. Some blood splatter from Blood from the Blood God. I tried to do a little bit of lighting effect with the lightning he's channeling, both on the ground and on his kind of forearm and his shirt here. Just a very fun miniature in general. And the bases for all of them, as I will move on to show you the two survivors in a second, it's the AK technical paint, the concrete technical paint with rattling grime over the top, and then just some tufts of grass to make it look like that one biome in the video game. One level has a biome that looks like that. Don't remember offhand, it's been many years. But this is Dwight, and then we have Jake Park, who is my go-to survivor to play as Jake Park. Dwight is kind of like the meme character. He's the character you go if you want to just troll, but kind of like just a basic office worker nerd look. The only difference is the red black striped tie. I always wondered if that was a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street, because he existed before they got the Freddy tie-in DLC. So I'm curious if that was just a little nod. I'm not sure. If they've ever gone on the record, you can let me know. And they all have the the hole for the hook on the back of the survivors. This is Space Wolves Grey for his jeans, and just Aggress Earthshade as a wash, Guilliman Flesh for his skin tone. It did not take long at all. For Jake, Militarum Green for his jacket. That is Ironjaw's yellow for his hobo trousers. Snakebite leather, and not snakebite leather, yeah, snakebite leather for his gloves, yes. And Guilliman Flesh for his skin tone, and then Aggress Earthshade over the top. Not as much detail, I would say, on the survivor miniatures for the game as there is for the killers, but that makes sense. The killers are also much, much larger than the survivors. They are in the video game as well, because they've got to hoist them onto their shoulders. But very, very nice detail. I've forgotten who it was that does the Dead by Daylight board game, but they did a good job on the quality of the miniatures. I'm very impressed. So, and they took to contrast paint like a duck to water, or a swan to water. I don't know expressions. Anyway, I'm sure I've rambled on, as I always end up doing in these. If you want to show me what you've been painting, you can do so in my Discord, or you can do so on Blue Sky. I'm at FlickReal on there, because despite there being barely anyone on Blue Sky, my name was already taken when I did get in. So I'm on there. I can link it if you ever stop by a Twitch stream. Same for the Discord if you want in. Happy to see pictures and miniatures you've been painting there. And next time we will definitely see the final two survivors for Dead by Daylight, although you might see them in a video prior to that, because they are going to be the next viewer verdict video. Let's see, what else have I got? Definitely some more Warcry stuff, just an Age of Sigmar in general, and I'm probably going to paint up those little pumpkin demon dudes from the Batman miniature game, just because I want to paint up some pumpkin guys, because they're fun. So I might end up doing that despite not being able to actually play them. So look out for that. Hope this inspired you to help get you through your pile of grey shame. It doesn't matter if you're a good painter or not, as long as you enjoy the process. So with that, thank you very much for watching till the end if you did. And go check out the channel sponsor if you're able, via the affiliate link. And if you do buy anything from that affiliate link, I will be compensated, which would be very nice. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. It's time for now.